I'm making it my mission to help you guys make your cars the best that they can be. And in today's video, we're going to be doing that by showing you exactly how to take your car to the next level by taking it to stage 2. Now, in this video, we're going to cover exactly how you can do that. We're going to be removing the catalytic converter and replacing that with a downpipe or a sports cat. And we're also going to be replacing the intake filter, and then we're going to go through the tuning options that are available as well. And by following this video, you're going to be able to do all the work yourself. You're going to save yourself a ton of money and get to where you want to be with your car that bit quicker and cheaper. So let's get straight into it and get these cars to stage 2. To get to stage 2, there's some things you're going to need. So we're going to need a downpipe or a sports cat, an upgraded intake air filter, and then a stage 2 tune as well. I suggest having a good socket set and spanner set, but if you don't have that, these are the essentials that you're going to need to be able to do the job. So let's start by popping the bonnet and getting the bonnet open. And then the first thing we're going to do is take off the air intake. Now, to take off the air intake, you're going to unclip this sensor with a small flathead screwdriver. Just give it a little twist and then pull it off. Make sure it's out the way. Next, unclip the 5 clips around the housing and then simply undo the Jubilee clip that's holding them together. Once you've done that, you can give it a good twist and a pull, and that should come off easily. Now we can see the air filter that's inside there. It's a good idea to get that rag or cloth and just pop that in there so we don't drop anything unwanted down into the engine. Remove the air filter, and then we'll move on to removing the bottom of the air filter intake housing. Now, it's held on with rubber bungs, so you've got to give it a little bit of welly to get it out. So just be careful when you're doing it. Do one corner at a time. Give it a good firm pull on each corner and it will pop out. Here you can see the locations of the rubber bungs that are holding it in place. So now we've got a lot more room to move. We can see exactly what we're doing. There's a couple of O2 sensors on here that we'll need removing. We'll take a closer look. So you can see here, this is the top of the cat that's held onto the turbo. You've got an O2 sensor here, another one that's a bit further down, which is just coming into focus. And then right at the bottom, you can see the 2 nuts that are holding the cat with support. So next we're just going to remove the top cowling, so give that a good pull on each corner. That's held on with rubber bungs, that'll pop straight off. Now we need to remove the connectors that the O2 sensors are connected with, which are these 2 here. So get the flathead, twist it in between to pop the grey clip off, and then you need to hook it under just like that to pop the clip off completely. That makes it the easiest way. So once you've done that, you can also remove the other side from the clip. Just give it a twist and then we'll be ready to remove the O2 sensor. Now I'm going to be using a adjustable spanner for this, but you can get specialist sockets with a slot in that slot over to be able to remove it, but they do come off quite easily. Just one firm push to crack that off, and then the O2 sensor can be removed. Now just make sure you hold the connector up in the air or put it somewhere where it's not going to get caught, because you don't want that wire to get twisted. And there we go, that's the first one off. So you can see here we've got the second connector, and the route follows down through these metal circlips round down to the second sensor, which you can see here. So moving back up to the connector, if you give it a little bit of a twist, it will actually pull off completely off of this plastic section. So I've removed that. Next we're going to get the small flathead screwdriver, pop it into that grey clip, and then take the second connector apart. Again, just keep it out of the way. So next we're going to either grab our socket or adjustable wrench. We're going to crack that O2 sensor off, and then again should be able to do that by hand. Make sure that cable's out the way. Now you'll see what I mean, because as I'm undoing it here, you'll see it twisting round freely and stopping it getting caught up or twisted, which we don't want. So that's the second connector off. We'll have another closer look in here. You can see now that's where the first sensor was, second sensor, and now we've got these two 13mm nuts to remove at the bottom as well. So grab a small 13mm wrench and socket. Smaller one's best for this because you've got a bit more room to move. So yeah, remove those two nuts. And then on the top end now, we're going to use the 13mm again. You might need a slightly larger ratchet for this, depending on how tight the brackets holding the cat to the turbo. But as you can see, the 13mm is right underneath here. But you want a shorter socket on this, because as you undo it, your ratchet will get caught if you don't use a short socket. So again, undo that one. Get that nice and loose. You'll feel the clip, it will get looser as you go along. Once that's loosened right up, you can jack up the car. If you don't know how to jack up the car, check out my other video. So once you've got the car jacked up and safe on axle stands, we can now go underneath and begin to work on the bottom. So you can see up here, you can see those two bottom bolts that were holding it on there. And you can also see the clamp that's holding it together at the top's loose and off there as well. Now, we've got these two nuts to take off here. They're on a 18mm, so we need to make sure that they're loose. So I've got a longer 18mm here, but you can do it with a shorter one. So get those two nuts off. So that now releases up the front end of the exhaust. And I'm going to remove the bolt from the top end of that clamp completely, so we can now loosen up the cat from the car. Now, you might need two hands to do that, and also to release off those bolts. So yeah, I needed two hands to give it a good wiggle to get that off. So once you've got that released, we're now ready to take this off. Now, depending on what exhaust you've got, will depend on whether you need to go down and unbolt the A-frame at the back. Most of you won't need to do this, but there's just 6 Torx head bolts holding that on. So if you find that you're struggling up that end, just remove those 6 bolts, release that A-frame, and then you can take off this whole section of exhaust. Now, I found that a lot easier anyway, because it meant I could work on this outside the car. So next up, we've got to separate the catalytic converter from the exhaust. Now, there's nodules on the cat, that you can, if it's tight like mine was, get a nice decent size flat-headed screwdriver or similar and give it a good knock in to release that cap from the exhaust. You can work your way round if necessarily. There's 3 of these little nodules on each side of the cap, so you can get that off. So you can see here the route going back up to the turbo. Now when you're putting the new one on, it's really ideal to have 2 pairs of hands for this, but if you're like me and you haven't, one of the ways you can do it is by releasing the jack. Make sure your cars are safe on axle stands. Get your new sports cap or downpipe lined up as best you can, and then just very gently raise the jack up to a point where it's touching. Now, as you can see here, the jack's on the bottom. It's all lined up quite nicely. The only thing we need to look for here is the clamp. Now, the clamp needs to be over both the turbo and the new downpipe or sports cap. So you can see there's a slight gap that I've got here and it's trapped in between, so you need to make sure that that's over both. Now I've completely removed the bolt so you can see how it needs to look. It needs to move freely but be over both sides. Now you can get the bolt back in now and do it up hand tight, and then slide the bracket round to the correct location at the bottom. So do that up finger tight so it's not going to move. You can see where it is from this view underneath. So once you've got that on, we know that the cat's in place. Now, one thing to point out, if you've bought a brand new replacement, you'll have a gasket that goes into the top of the downpipe, and that needs to go in before you put it back together, and it squashes down when you connect the two. So we've got the exhaust back on now. You can see I've lined it up at the front here. This part actually twists, so you can twist it into the exhaust, and then the clamp slides back over into this location, and then we tighten those nuts back up. Put them on finger tight so we've got movement to connect the back of the exhaust if need be. Once you've got the exhaust lined up and it's completely back on the car, then you can start doing everything up properly. So get everything tightened back up. You can see here we're going to tighten back up the clamp with the 13mm short socket. Get that nice and tight, but obviously don't over tighten it. So most of you are going to be putting these 2 washer nuts back on down here, but mine doesn't have a bracket, but most of you do, so replace those if you've got that bracket. Moving back onto the O2 sensor, so it's going to run in this direction down the back and back through those clips. Depending on your downpipe, it may need to run a slightly different route. So remember to put the O2 sensor in first and do it up so we're not getting any twists in the cable. So you can now see that even in this area, when you're just doing it up by hand, it can get twisted. So make sure that you untwist any turns in the cable. I've also had to move my connector over because it wasn't quite long enough when I fitted my downpipe, because it was further back on the second O2 sensor. So bear that in mind. Now we're going to do the front O2 sensor. So do that one up by hand again, making sure it's not getting twisted up anywhere. And then you can go in and just tweak them up with your socket, special socket, or in my case with the adjustable spanner. Because that second O2 is further back, you might have to just come round to this side to be able to get down to reach it, to give it a proper tighten up with the adjustable spanner or socket. So once they're tightened up, we're going to feed the connectors back up to the top of the engine bay. Again, if you've had to reroute them, just make sure that you can get them in a place where you can make them secure, but ideally you want to get them back to the original position where you clip them back onto the car. I will, however, just show you the reroute that I had to take due to that O2 sensor being further away. So I've brought it back up, out the way of any heat, over the heat shield, back over the top, and then connected it further back onto the engine. And then I will just secure this connector with a cable tie to the high pressure fuel pump. You probably won't need to do that, but that's the route I took with this particular O2 sensor. And you can see here the front one is in a good position. It's pretty much exactly where it should be. So that's just come back straight up into the connector. Now we're going to replace the air filter housing. So remove the rag stroke cloth that we put in to stop anything going in. Keep the connectors out of the way. Remove any debris that might be under there, because the leaves etc. quite often get caught underneath. Then we're going to replace the bottom of the housing. There's the 5 bungs that we need to take care of here. So get it lined up, and then once you've got it lined up, it'll be a nice hard push down to then get it refitted. Now we're going to move on to putting the new filter in. So here's the old filter, and we're going to replace that with a cotton MMR filter here. These are very popular for stage 2. There's other stuff out there that you can do. You can get full induction kits, etc. But if you want to do it in a reasonable cost, MMR cotton filter is the way to go. So we're going to refit the top side of the housing, and it's got the 5 clips that need to be pushed in. So keep some weight on top as you're doing that, and they'll clip in easy. Then we've got the connector to pop back on, and we've also got the Jubilee clip to refit and tighten up. And then last but not least, on the top side is replace the cowling cover. And that's the hard work complete. So it's now ready for stage 2. Note, if you've put a downpipe on and not a sports cat, you may get a light up on the dash, but that will go off once you've tuned the car. So now we've done all the hard work and all the bolt-ons are on the car, and it is actually ready for your stage 2 tune. There's a few options out there that we can do. You've got OTS, which stands for off-the-shelf maps from companies like MHD and Boot Mode, or you can go to a local tuner that will tune your car specifically to the mods that you've got. Now, they're both great in different ways. The tuner, the local tuner that you'll have, will have a rolling road. They'll be able to tune your car specifically to the mods that you've got, which is brilliant. However, the off-the-shelf maps have been thoroughly tested on lots of different cars, on rolling roads, and they're also a really great option. I've gone for MHD, and the reason for that is that there's a lot of information out there on this platform. It's a really easy platform to use. You can do all of the work yourself, which is something that I enjoy, and you can do it all from home. You literally download the app, you upload the tune, and you're on stage 2. Now I've got a complete guide how to upload MHD to your car, so check out the end of the video for the link for that. And yeah, that is the option that I would go for, because you get, not only do you get your stage 2 mat with that, you get a stage 1, stage 2 and stage 2 plus, and that's all under the super license, which you can then map as many times to your car as you want to. So for that single price, you can then upload from stage 1, 2 and 2 plus. Now I've already covered stage 1 on the channel, so if you've missed that, it's definitely worth checking out. And going forward, we're going to have the stage 2 plus modifications and uploads as well. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, give it a like. And if you want more of this content, why not subscribe? See you soon.